maybe that's it. You go to that one.
It was, this one here.
Yeah, that'll work.
Sure, thank you.
Did you get it, Mike? The latest one that she sent us?
There you go.
Is that
So, we got the feeling that you were interested in some reducing the costs overall. We also got a sense that people were interested in at least giving some thought to a county-wide school district, a middle school. And so we put together two example options. One of them here, the first one is, could we do a middle school on the Dixie site that was less expensive? The option that we had given you before replaced the entire school. We went back and said, well, what if as we did under the A options for the high schools, we actually retained the building in the front and we just simply added across the back? What would that cost? In your package, you'll see it costs about $16 million as opposed to the $21 million that we were looking at earlier.
Question is that, now, you're leaving the high school there?
We're leaving the front of this is the option that would go with the consolidated high school, which is just a middle school on the Dixie campus, correct?
Just middle school and no high school?
Right, all we did here is, in essence, what we did is we did a 3A option for the middle school, showing you not a completely new middle school there, but one that used the front of the building and retained the music wing. It is possible that you could even retain the cafeteria and gymnasium here by modernizing. They definitely need work. They need to be renovated. But they, in terms of being in the way, they were kind of in the way. So we gave you this. It is possible that you could look at a design that retained those two pieces as well. The middle school is not as intense in terms of their use of a gymnasium because of their smaller athletic program. The other option that we looked at is, what if you only had one middle school county-wide? We happened to look at what if we did that middle school on the Wright Middle School site and added the things that we need to add in order to bring that up to a 669 student school, which would be adequate to serve all of the middle school students in the county. And what would that cost? It's about $15 million. So it's a wash between these two options. Let me just say that we could have done another option that did a middle school countywide on the Dixie site. And so if you want to look at a countywide middle school, certainly you could look at this one, but you could also look at another site for that. On the Dixie site, I wouldn't necessarily put a full high school on the Dixie site for 1,000 students because it's actually undersized, 18 acres, I believe. But this is just one, all I'm doing is giving you a couple of options. From a capital standpoint, they seem to be a wash. They may be different from an operating standpoint because in the case of putting a middle school on the Dixie site, you would still have all of the same number of schools operating as you have right now. So before I go on to our recommendations, should I just make sure that these two options or any variation on these options are understood?
I got a question. Excuse me, I hate that turn all around. So, I'm just kind of going back in time a little bit. I wasn't here on April the 9th.
I know.
Yeah, I know it was unfortunate, but February the 12th, we approved some educational specifications. Okay. That more or less set the benchmark what we were looking at. So we approved them in such a way that gave us ability, which I'm told we have the ability anyway, but the motion, the approved motion was essentially, gave us a lot of flexibility in the educational specification. So then February 27th came along and we had a steering committee meeting and some options. I got a copy of the presentation right here. And then we had a board meeting. And I think y'all brought some general options to us and basically we're looking to see, hey, if this is this something that, we need to add to or take away from them? I think that was the verbiage, that was used. And I think after the steering committee meeting, the steering committee wanted to see some costs. Then the board essentially had the same view, but there was no additions or deletions to these options that were brought to us, and involved, you know, a renovation that's involved raising, essentially like the middle school option that you're showing there at Dixie, and then also the same at Abbeville. And then April the 9th comes along, so the next time y'all come here, and that's completely off the table. We go to a full modernization of both high schools at, I think, a cost of, what, 32 million some odd dollars. And so I'm trying to figure out, when did the board, and then even with these options, when did the board, or who directed us to take these options off the table? The renovation options, the ones that are right here on this presentation, where we talk about raising the old parts of Dixie High School, and raising the old parts of Abbeville High School, and building something that we could afford. So I'm trying to figure out, where was the direction between February 27th and April the 9th? That's my first question.
We think we brought back exactly the options that were approved. I guess I'm confused by that. I actually have those options on the other PowerPoint presentation. And to our knowledge, the options that were approved on that date in,
Is this the one you sent me?
no.
No, this is, okay.
The previous one.
Yeah, previous one.
I can find it.
It may be, it was February 27th. If you want to get back to that.
Yeah, well, it's, you can give them the option that I said was not the right option because it actually didn't include, what was the one you just had up?
This one, the one you
Yeah.
sent me today?
Yeah, right. So this option right here, no, that's the one, okay, here we go. This is the option on April 9th. And we, the options that we had the two options for the Career Center, which were approved. We had a replacement option for Abbeville High School, and we had a partial replacement, which retained the old part of the building and built the new behind it. And then we had the complete replacement of Dixie, and we had the partial replacement, which retained the old building and,
Okay, so 1A, that was 32 million. Am I right?
1A is 30 million.
Okay, so 30 million. So now we're, again, things have changed since the meeting last week, and I don't recall ever talking about consolidated middle school, but I may be wrong. How do we go from 30 million to 16 million? And I realize that there's a few square foot difference, but I'm just looking at that option for Dixie High School on the middle school on the newer presentation. And it looks like that's sized for about 424 core. It's a 424 core, 339 students. Your new option.
Okay, we're talking about the middle school.
Yeah. Middle school.
Okay, let me go back to the middle. So the middle school that we brought you last week.
No, fast forward on to this week.
Okay, so one of the options for the consolidated high school assumed that there would be a middle school on the Dixie site. That we would have a consolidated high school and that we would retain a middle school in Dixie and due west.
Yeah.
And the one option that we presented was a brand new option. So we didn't present a scenario 3 and then a scenario 3A.
Okay.
So I felt as though, based on, in all fairness, that we should bring back to you a 3A option for the middle school on due west.
Okay, well, still, $30 million for, in the previous April 9th, this spreadsheet I have here, $30 million for, a new Dixie High School. Or partial replacement. So how do we go from 30 million to 16 million when it's relatively few amount, the square
This
footage?
is just the middle school.
Yeah, I get that.
Okay, so so the other, can you bring back the, I'm sorry.
I understand that. What I'm trying to
Okay,
say is, why is there such a difference
Okay,
in the two? Because the spec, the educational specification actually, and I realize, I think the middle school is maybe a little reduced down, but it looks like it's a little over 215 square foot per kids, but the ed spec on the middle schools is higher in per square foot size than the high schools.
for the middle school for Dixie would serve about 350 students.
Okay, so
Um,
the option that y'all brought originally was for what, a core of 526 students?
Right, for the high school, and the high school has a large gymnasium with all the seating associated with it, also has an auditorium
Okay,
with the seating associated with the auditorium.
okay.
So high school is actually a little bit more intensive a use. Here's another example for you. The high schools for 525 students, okay, according to our prototype educational specification, is 108,000 square feet.
Mhm.
But a middle school for 669 is only 118. So you can actually put more middle school students into less space because of because we don't have a gymnasium that has all the bleachers, we don't have an auditorium at all, because we usually use the cafeteria as a cafetorium.
So the middle school and the educational specification, I've got a excerpt from it here, but what was it based on? What was the student count it was based on?
So we have two of them. Well, we've actually gone through a couple of them. For example, the one at Wright Middle School is 380 students, so the capacity is about 400.
Okay. Okay, so I'm just trying to still figure out, if you look at the ed spec, the square footage requirement for middle school is a little higher than high school. And now I know that we're showing less students at the middle school.
You're
than we are at
shaking your
high
head, you're saying that's not accurate?
No, I don't. The square footage required for the high school is larger on a per student basis than it is for the middle school.
school. Yeah, I didn't in here somewhere. But the presentation you gave, I think in January, it shows it as being more. And that's what kind of thumbs up on me.
Okay, so I'd have to go back and look at each one of them.
Oh, here.
But it's pretty typical for the high school to be more.
Well, this is part of y'all's presentation from
Mhm.
January sometime.
Okay, so, I know why.
Okay.
Sorry, I forget it. I'm sorry. The middle school is larger because the average class size at the middle school level is 18-1 versus 24-1
Okay.
at the high school level. There are, though, however, more,
Yeah. Well, I'm still on this, to me, the magnitude, when you look at 16 million versus 30 million, and it looks like the same scenario, except for a few less square feet. Think about 25 or so.
73, our middle school is 73,000, 74,000
So
square
if we added
feet.
25,000 square foot, at
Our high school
226,
is
that gets you
100.
to about $10 million more dollars, it would be about, well, something like that. I think I did some numbers, no, it gets you to about 21 million.
So if our prototype for the high school is 108
Okay,
for 525,000
okay.
square feet, and our prototype for our middle school for 400 is 73,000 square feet.
Okay.
It's a pretty significant difference. I mean, that's almost 40,000 square feet difference.
Well, what was the difference in the number of students?
525 high school students,
Versus?
108,000 square feet,
Gotcha.
400 students, and it's not exactly 400, but it's close to
Yeah,
400.
24.
Okay, is 73
Okay.
for something.
Okay.
So there is a difference in terms of the square footage of
I'm
those.
just telling you, it looks like a vast magnitude of difference between 16 million and 30 million to me, and I realize that the high school prototype that we've been using for the new high school is more.
Right.
But just doing the rough math for me, I don't, I just
Okay,
can't
That's,
can't figure
that's
out, I can't figure out the difference.
it's 35,000 square feet.
35,000 square foot.
Right.
Okay, I come up with some less than that, but that was just my number coming up.
Right.
That's good.
Okay.
All right, but there again, you know, I was just curious as to, how the options came about, and I see what you're talking about. My organization, I think that since last week's board meeting, we come with even more in terms of a consolidated middle school. You know, I'm trying to figure out where that direction's coming from.
Oh, the consolidated middle school,
Yeah.
it came to me as a request to
Okay.
at least look at it.
Okay. Well, it's a lot of your recommendations, so I was wondering.
It's
where it
actually
came
not, I don't think that is going to be our recommendation.
from. Well,
So,
it's in the scenario list.
right, I brought it up because somebody requested it.
And
I
believe-
actually can get to our recommendations.
That's fine.
And that came from the comments of the community night.
The comments from the community night, so the board didn't have a directive
No,
in that
she
night.
just took the community night from the community night.
Okay. All right, well, that answers my
Is that
question.
what, I mean, that's
Right.
very.
So you had asked us for our recommendations. One of our jobs is to give you a master facilities plan that's for 10 years. Our recommendation for your long-range master facilities plan would be, we believe that the countywide high school on a central site has many academic benefits for your students. It probably does have operational budget efficiencies in terms of staffing and maintenance and energy. We think that the co-locating of the career center and the transportation costs, as well as the benefits to students not being transported in the middle of the day, probably also has some benefits. We recognize that you do not have a central site right now, and that in many ways that this is a local decision on your part. Our second recommendation is that you provide consistent middle school experience for your students. That the 6th, 7th, and 8th graders countywide have a consistent experience. We happen to favor keeping the school in Due West. We recognize that that this too is a local decision. That if you keep a middle school in Due West, that in some ways you're actually going to be losing some of the operational benefits of only operating one West school. And that it's your finances to bear in mind here. We happen to recommend the replacement of John C. Calhoun. We believe that your long-range facilities plan should do that. We believe that the poor quality of the building envelope due to its age will require its replacement. We think that replacement versus modernization is less disruptive to the students. We think you should replace, we think that you should fix the security entrance to Westwood Elementary School with basically a storefront of some sort, so that people go through a double vestibule. First of all, they know which door to go in, then they go through a double vestibule and are immediately seen and routed through the main office. We think that this is the first school you should modernize. Maybe at the end of this 10-year long-range facilities plan, that Westwood should be the first school there on the list. We think that small, limited renovation projects at the elementary schools that focus on healthy, future-ready teaching and learning spaces is an important part of the way in which you should be maintaining and providing for every school in the district. We also recognize, based on, going backwards, that I see it's been doubled. We also recognize that the scenario that I just gave you, that the one in which we think that's what your long-range facilities plan is based on, and I have gone ahead and reduced the cost of the middle school at Due West to one that is a combination of new and renovation of space. Would be about $93 million plus site and utility costs associated with the new high school. I think of this then as $100 million. If you were to bond it tomorrow, then everything would be paid for right away. However, we also know that you had talked a couple of weeks back, last week, about not doing a $100 million bond. And that you would probably prefer something smaller. And in which case then, our recommendation would be to go ahead and stay with whatever high school and middle school option you choose. That you address the issues at the Career Center and at the elementary school with your annual maintenance funding. It's not unusual for the projects that have to be done at the elementary school and the Career Center be done through a major maintenance plan. In some cases, some of the things we've recommended are not typically even bonded because they want you to bond things that are going to last for 20 years. Things like playground equipment and furniture that's not associated with the construction of a new school sometimes is not considered bondable, in which case then you may need to do them through it as part of your annual maintenance. And at some point come back, and what that leaves out of our long-range facilities plan that you would not be able to do as part of a $70 million bond would be the replacement of John C. Calhoun and of Westwood's front door. If you adopt that as part of your long-range facilities plan, you would either need to, as part of your annual maintenance, collect money until you could afford to do them, or go back to your voters at some point in the next 10 years and say we would like to do 2 elementary schools as well. It would be a much smaller bond, a bond closer to 20 million than the one that you're looking at right now, or less. Well, depending on what happens to prices during that period of time. The bond in this particular case, the bottom number here is about $65 million with at least $5 million associated with site and utility costs of your new high school.
Any questions from the board? Mr. Taylor? Ms. Cunningham? Tisdale?
What do you say, no changes on your recommendation, we got 70 million bond. You said no changes to the middle and high school. I want credit out there for me, maybe credit everybody else, but I'm not quite clear on that.
Mr. Tisdale wasn't here last week.
Oh, in terms of our recommendation, right, that we would still recommend that even if you went with a $70 million bond, that we still believe you should go with the new countywide high school, and that you would go with a new middle school on the Due West campus. New renovated, modernized.
Okay, now, okay. This, 79, 49, might as well say 49.5 million for new countywide high school. There's no athletic facilities involved in that project, right?
We added $4 million for site work, which we believe covers the athletic fields, the parking area, the circulation on the campus. It would not cover any extraordinary site costs, which is why I have additional, anything extraordinary beyond, the mass moving of dirt or dealing with any water pieces.
So this wouldn't include any road improvements?
It does not include anything off your site.
Or water sewer? No water sewer? Nothing like
No,
that?
no, that's why I left that at 65.
This is
Yeah.
just purchasing the land and putting the building on the site.
And doing the fields and the parking and the circulation and everything associated with your high school.
Do you really think we can do a football field for $4 million?
We're used to doing them for $1 million. So, and I understand that you all have seen other people spend up to $4 million just on the stadium, but I guess we're just kind of used to doing them for $1 million, And I think Sarah mentioned last time she was here, that that's not a turf field, that would be a regular grass field. A turf field costs another $500,000.
I understand that. But I mean, and I'm not doubting what you say, but it's just, in my mind, I'm thinking concession, press box,
Now, the press box is included in the building.
okay, the press box.
The press box, the bathrooms, we don't have a, what is it you have out at Abbeville? You have a field house, right?
Yeah.
No field house. It's a press box, concession stand, bathrooms.
And what I'm saying,
That's in the building cost.
that's in the 49 million,
Yeah,
okay.
because that's part of the square footage.
I mean, does a lot of new high schools have field houses, or are they just attached to the school?
No, the standard I gave you is the one I'm most familiar with, that they just, inside the building, you have a PE locker room and you have what they call a team locker room. And so when you have visiting teams, they come in and they actually, either they use the existing PE locker room and the other, you use your team locker room, which is more typical because the team locker room usually has larger lockers for the football uniforms. And that team usually doesn't use the showers anymore. They come in, they play the game, they hop into the bus and they just go home.
Mr. Dunn? You, since you don't,
So the career center site is off the table, is that correct?
Yes, sir. Or what we were told by the engineering group.
So, all right. So I kind of go back to, in Buster's comments, I think about what's all included, and we talked extensively last time about, if nothing else, proper contingency and proper escalation costs.
and is that directed to Deanna? Is contingency in that cost at all?
So, no, as you remember, Sarah talked a little bit about this last time. Contingency, we're used to contingency becoming part of an individual project once you have defined the scope and done a cost estimate. Then you actually know what to build a contingency on. So normally, the way we would think about it is we would hand the educational specification that you're satisfied with to an architect. The architect, once they've done the concept plan and the schematic plan for you, they would then hire a cost estimator who would come in and actually do the cost estimate on that project. At that point, if it's within your budget, you would probably add, and Sarah says she would typically add 5% right then on top of the cost estimator's cost. Because now you know what you're adding your cost estimate to. If it is not within budget, then you basically, at concept design, you go back and you say, okay, you're going to do some redesign work and you're going to get it back into budget. Sarah in particular has run some pretty major capital programs where on any given year she might have as many as 10 projects under construction, 10 major projects under construction. You know, and it was her belief that this is a give and take process for you working with your architect during this entire process to keep your projects within budget. But at least you would add your contingency when you had your cost estimator's information, because that's the most important part, because now you've actually gone out and committed to that project. In all the project school districts that I work with, we don't have a contingency to the CIP. Now, in your case, if this is what you went out to your public referendum, it doesn't have a whole lot of flexibility in it. In the original one, which was larger, you had some flexibility where you could say the career center move would be an ad alternate. Right? And in that way, you would give yourself a little bit more flexibility. But in this particular case, you would not. I think one of the first things you need to do before you go with this number is make sure you know what your site is, because that's your biggest contingent problem right now.
That's what I was thinking. It's sort of like, we discussed this out in right middle. You sort of have to go forward and then back up. Okay, we got the utilities, as far as water, sewer, and get all those numbers together to add to this right here.
Right. So again, most of the school districts I work with do not take care of the road work that is not on their property.
But wasn't we told that we have to pay for this?
Yes.
You were told that, okay, you did meet with the city or county,
Well, they had, and
There's
we
you.
had an engineer.
and they said you had to pay for any improvements,
And see, that's the,
but not do them.
No, but they would come out and inspect the area and tell you what you're gonna have to do.
All right, turn lanes.
and
Right.
see,
They don't pay for it.
until we get all those, until we get
They don't
all
let
those
us
numbers
meter
together.
pay for it.
And let's say we were going for a referendum today, and let's say it passed today. We're probably looking at 3 years down the road. And a contractor's gonna build it out, and I'm just sort of looking at some numbers here, they're gonna put about 12% inflation in there over a 3-year period. So I'm thinking that, and I like these numbers right here for building the building and the middle school. But we still may have to go close to $100 million. Even in this scenario, you may be looking close to $100 million right there, because like I say, we don't know road, we don't know sewer, inflation, and things like that. You gotta be, because we can't say we can do it for this, and then inflation gets us, and once we get, if we get a bond referendum passed, that's the money you got to work with. If you start coming up short, you're gonna have to start cutting somewhere else. So you're gonna start cutting square footage or something like that.
So, Mr. Taylor, in other words, like you said, working forwards, backwards.
That's right. You gotta go forward and back.
Wouldn't it be beneficial, you know, if we know that these options are here, wouldn't it be beneficial for the board to, you know, think about that, go ahead and get some, you know, have the district look into some sites, and potentially, as we heard from Ronnie last week, we could hire an architect and do it a bond anticipation note from our 8% money. We could go ahead and hire an architect and get those numbers like you're talking about, before we even went out with a referendum.
But now, if I'm not mistaken, most architects, they charge you, I think, 2 different fees. One, that they'll do this, and then if you pass your referendum and they design the building and blah, 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 then there's another fee involved.
Right.
So,
Is that right?
we often do what we call a test fit. And we basically, once you've gone out, you've chosen 3 sites. One 4 miles outside of town here, one, halfway between here and due west, whatever. You've chosen, like, say, 3 sites that you
In
want.
Calhoun Falls.
Right. One, all the way. And you would actually hire an architect whose job it is to do a test fit. So they would go out, they would evaluate the site, they would make sure that they would put the building on it, they would show you where your fields fit, they would show you, and then they would give you the cost estimate on what it would be to to do all the work that's there on that site. You don't have to use that architect again, right? You then, once you've gone through your referendum process and you've been successful, then you might hire a totally different architect, right?
Yeah, we gotta get civil engineers in there, work with the state. Gotta get civil engineers work with the state about roads.
And they, all right.
Ronnie,
I want to address
that. Oh, I'm sorry.
Did you want to address about the architect at all? Or did I say that correctly?
Almost, kind of.
Well,
Just
let's say it right. Let's say it right.
Well, you can hire an architect, and you can use your 8% money, you can do a bond anticipation note, if you have funds available. This current year, with the current millage rate, that you can use some of that money, if you choose to pay an architect.
Okay, Mr. Dillon?
Yeah, I was just gonna lay this out here. We had an engineer in here last week, and I hate to call it, he's actually here tonight. And he was asked to come and give us some ideas of cost. And then then the career center site come about, and that seemed to accommodate, water and sewer. And I think somebody mentioned they had a red light at the intersection. And, so he gave us some costs on potentially what that could be, and he included adequate contingency, and he included adequate construction escalation. And, I mean, if you take the athletic fields out of the equation, and say you're gonna continue to play football at Abbeville High School, I mean, we're still way over $100 million on one facility, potentially. Because if we start running water and sewer, transportation improvements and all of these things that we're gonna have to do. And like I go back to before, the only fair location is in the center of this county. Then, do we need to hire an architect to go tell us what we already know? Or are we pretty much set and determined that we can pass $100 million or more in terms of a bond referendum, and it could be a lot or more? Because I don't think the 3 years is a forecastable number. I think it's probably gonna be more like 4, maybe even 5, since we don't have the site. If we had the site and it's locked in, then you can shrink that down some, but I think you're right. If you had the site, you're at 3 years, maybe. So, I mean, what are we talking about here? Everybody went around this table here last week and we talked about numbers that we thought that the public would fight on. And I think the high numbers were $70 million. And I think we're all kind of personally, and I know my comment was 50 million, and I felt like that was wishful thinking on my part. So what are we talking about? I mean, I don't disagree that we need to continue the process and we need to do more proper due diligence, just as I said before. But we've got to understand that unless somebody knows that a vote's gonna pass in this county for over $100 million, we've got to seriously look at what we can do. And I'll just go back, and nobody wants to listen to me, and that's, I don't think anybody does, but the renovation options of these 2 high schools, if the 2 high schools are a priority, we got to take a serious look at that if that is something that we think we can do. Second of all, it's my belief, and as I've heard since I've been on this board and 2 years before, if Abbeville High School's got a problem health-wise, then we as a board need to step up and do what we need to do to remediate that issue. Now, does that mean immediately? And I haven't seen the evidence. I've asked for it. I haven't seen the evidence. I've looked at PPI's report. They did some air quality monitoring. I didn't see anything that staggered me. But that's the only report I've seen. So what are we going to do about those students? Or are we going to risk leaving, if the school is in that bad condition, we're going to leave them there for 5 more years? Or are we going to take some action and go, it may even be a temporary route? That's my heart in the matter. So are we willing to wait? And 2, are we willing to jump out on a limb on some exceedingly grotesque number, over $100 million potentially, that we're going to hang everything out on a wing and a prayer and leave it to the voters, and then when it don't pass, we're going to be stuck with $5 million we got to spend, and that's all we're going to have. That's the only thing we can borrow without going to the voters. So that's just my piece.
I'm concerned that to do nothing.
That's my option.
When if we say, well, the voters they're not going to pass whatever the recommendation is, and the recommendation got to come from us.
Right.
And we can't make a recommendation saying, well, they may do this, or they may do that. You got, I can't, I'm telling you this much, I can't say what my wife is going to do about certain things. Amen. I'll agree with that. And so I know I can't say what, what the voters are going to say or do. I do know from what I've heard and what I've seen so far, if we renovate the 2 high schools and bring them up to par and so forth, we're not going to change the kind of coast offerings. We're going to change buildings. kind of experiences that children are going to get, that we say they need, and that our children, when they leave here, they compete with other students who have had experiences that ours, and we as voters or we as a board say, well, y'all just go out there. You know, we just compete. And our kids are struggling, and they try to do it. But if that's what we want for our children. Now, we don't know about the costs or the additional costs. Why don't we find out for sure? Now, we got some estimation, but why don't we just find out for sure what it's going to cost? And then you were looking at figures that we know. And then if we got some figures that we know, if there's a decision that we want to go to the voters for, we go to it. If we say no.
Right.
But I'm still going back. We can't make any decision based on what we think they're going to pass, because if they don't pass it, we want to do something. And I'm sure they know we want to do something. And so, I would not, whenever it's time to vote, I'm not going to vote on what I think they might do. I'm going to vote on what I think is best for our children.
Good. And Mr. Tisdale, I agree with you. I don't know sometimes how my wife votes, or how she would vote. I just have to pay the bill. But I think we are, you know, the information that Mr. Ware was here last week and provided us during the workshop, we thank you, Dan, for that information. And he has been involved with new schools, constructions and renovations and that sort of thing. And so I do think they are valid points, while though we really don't know a site. So it would, and like Mr. Tisdale said, and Mr. Taylor even said, I think it's going to be important for us to get that narrowed down. And if that's going out, looking at some sites, hiring the people to come in to give us some true certified numbers, and then have that written down, I too don't agree with speculation, I think.
Now, I sat down today and went through all this, you know, all different scenarios and things. If we just deal with the high school, okay, and we left them right where they are, but we just did let's say partial replacement. That was one of the scenarios here, okay? There's probably some things in here that we could cut back on, maybe a couple of $1 million, and that would put you down around $58 million. And that would, you do renovations of both high schools, use the same site, and that may be that's just me, okay? That may be one of the things we need to look at, and we just leave high schools where they are, do a partial renovation, and I think we may get out for under $60 million doing that. But we won't do anything else in the district. That's all we'll do is just do high school.
And we still don't address the curriculum.
And that's right. But now the two high schools are the thing that really, out of all the facilities we have, they're the ones that need attention the most.
Mr. Cunningham, Ms. Cunningham.
Ms. Taylor made a good comment about we need to go forward. We need to go and look aggressively, board, district, whoever, we need to aggressively look to see if we can find that site we're looking for. Bring that back and do that. If that's not an option after we look at that site and we see how much it is, then we go to those other options. We can't. To me, as I said last week, if we don't look for a site, we have really not even explored that option, which is not fair to persons who believe that that should be an option, and also means we wasted money and time looking at what that could be if we're not going to do the other part and see what it would be if we have a site. And once we found that site and we looked at it, the three whatever, and it's not an option, then we can go to the other option. My other thing I have to say is PPI has done a great job. We appreciate what you've done. They've done what we asked them to do. So as far as that, they've done their part. They gave their recommendations. Now it's up to us as a board to see where we go next and what we do for the students. And as quickly as we can decide what our next step is, we can go go home, because if you all are like I am,
Well,
you worked really hard today.
well, we have a few more comments. Mr. Carter, you got anything? Mr. Brooks?
Just a couple of comments. I know people think I'm a huge financial conservative. I am, I'll admit that. And so there's no need to repeat what I've already said about we have no way of knowing what the voters are going to accept. You just have to look at what's happening across the state. Okay? In today's email, I don't know how many of y'all look through the School Board Association sends out e-clips of newspapers all over the state. In today's Bluffton Times, I think, the voters in Bluffton, which is in Beaufort County, they had a $76 million bond that failed 72% of the voters. 72% of people voted against a $76 million bond. Chester had one similar to that. I don't know. I wish I knew the answer. I'd be happy to tell you. I don't know the answer. You've got to try to do nothing's not an option.
Right.
We've established that. I keep saying we have to try to present an option that's viable for the voters to buy into. Being a financial conservative, I think $100 million is a little.
Mr. Abbott, you good? No. Yeah. Mr. Rhodes?
No, I'm like everybody else. I think we're at a crossroads or whatever you want to call it, where we got to figure out since Career Center area apparently it's not viable. Where do we go from there? Is there anywhere around where that's for sale? Even, I rode the county pretty much this weekend, chasing Philip around. And I didn't see a lot of property for sale that's, close to the center of the county. I think, all joking aside, somebody had come up to me and said, well, the sanctuary is for sale over in County Falls. And I laughed at him and said, that's not a viable center of the county at all. But,
It'd be pretty on
it'd be pretty right on the lake, name it Lakeland's, whatever, big high school right overlooking the lake. That's, all the fishing teams would have a ball, they wouldn't have to go far to fish, but I'm like everyone else. If the Career Center area is not a viable set, we gotta find a couple of spots that we think might be viable. If not, then we need to, like Buster and Mr. Dunn said, we want to say, all right, and I hate to say this, the curriculum's not gonna be an important part, which that's wrong, in my view. I think the curriculum should be what's important, because our kids are struggling, and I know for a fact they are, because I've talked to some that are in school right now, and have two of them, not counting mine, were straight A honor students, and both had one in Abbeville and one in Dixie, and they're in two major colleges, and one of them has actually left that college and is going to a tech school now because they could not make it in the classes, and they just couldn't do it. And I hate it that it's come down to we can't get a referendum in the past to do something for our kids to make it where they can compete with York and Union and all these other counties, because our county's huge, it's large, but it's 70% rural, and regardless of what you're gonna do, somebody's gonna have to travel one way or the other. When we close County Falls, those kids have to travel. The ones that don't go to their charter school, they have to travel either Dixie or Abbeville. The kids that are at the charter school now, that are at the Career Center, travel to the Career Center on their own. They're not bused. Something's got to give. I know that's a big monkey wrench I've heard. I've seen the comments, I've seen the quotes, I've seen the emails. You got to travel. When I was in high school, I was in the county band. All three schools had kids in the county band. And guess what? I traveled to either Dixie, County Falls, or Abbeville every day to practice with 295 little kids from the county that competed weekly in that band, and was one of the top 5 bands in the state. I'm talking about out of 4A schools. because we were considered a 4A school. And we brought, I don't know if they're still there, but the band room was slapped full of trophies that band won. And I was in it from 77 till they disbanded. The board
I know.
said it was a cost.
That was Bernadette, look.
It was Red Regiment, and we traveled. I mean, yeah, we loaded up on buses or we drove cars. And I mean, I just hate to say that, you know, we're not gonna do something for our kids just because we think we can't get a referendum passed and we gotta get it passed the parents and non-parents and the older people in the county that's gonna wind up flipping this bill for us because we don't have the money here to do it. If we had the money here to do it, there wouldn't be no question, we'd already done it. So,
Right. Yes, sir.
I just want to say, Mr. Rose, I have to disagree a little bit on the educational part, because you can't each year show the test scores we show and say our kids aren't getting a competitive education. That doesn't fly, okay? Our kids are getting a very good education. But some kids struggle, sure. But some of our kids go to school not having the same semester hours the kids at other places. Well, that's just a fact. That's where you live, okay? We live in Abbeville. You gotta live in what we can offer. But I am gonna disagree that I don't think our kids get the proper education. I disagree with that.
well, I ain't saying that, I mean, yeah, you can look at our school. And I told this in the community before, I said, we're in the top 5 as the lowest income school district in the state. Well, we're also in the top 5 as far as scores. You know, yeah, I agree wholly with that. But they're going in, some of them behind those students because we can't offer, just like she just said, we can't offer everything at Abbeville and Dixie at the same time. We can offer some here at Abbeville but not at Dixie.
And we could offer if we
That's
was.
just a fact. No, you won't be able to offer everything. That's a misconception. Please, if you need to address this, please address this. And if I'm wrong, I'll admit I'm wrong. You're not going to be able to offer a huge new curriculum, are we?
You will be able to offer more than you offer right now.
More than you offer now. Well, that could be 2 more classes, okay? People need to understand. I wish we could offer a curriculum like they do in Richland, all right? I got a sister whose grandkids go to school with her mother, all right? She tells me about the courses those kids take in that school. And she's like, I wish my kids the kids in Abbeville could have the same opportunity. I wish they could too, okay? We'll never be able to afford to offer what Richland can offer, or what Forage County can offer, okay? Now, we can offer more, I agree. But I don't want people to have the impression that we're gonna offer what they can offer.
Anybody else got any? Brandon?
Well, I just think that, like Mr. Chisholm said, until we, go out and actually search for some locations and really rule that out, how do we really know? And we can't sit here and project. I understand what you're saying, Mr. Brooks. I hear it the opposite way. I hear a lot of taxpayers saying, you know what, I'm willing to pay a little bit more if y'all would bring something to the table that shows us what we're really gonna be doing here. So, obviously, doing nothing is not an option. We keep talking about the high schools, which obviously they do stick out like a sore thumb. So, to sit here as a board, and say who's gonna pay for what, or who's gonna support what, I don't think that we would be doing the kids a justice by, or the proper due diligence by at least not going like Ms. Cunningham said. We've hired these people to come in, they've done a great job. Why would we stop now, and sell ourselves short potentially? It may be a spot of land, or, that may work. Then again, it may not be. So until we go out, I don't know what the next policy would be, or how we would go about as a board doing that, to possibly bring some sites back, so that we can look to see, okay, if this is not an option, well, let's fix this area.
Right.
If it is an option, well, where do we go from here? So I would just, as a board member, like to see that.
So if Dr. Hall, the direction that you would like to hear is not,
If the board has
not making
property
a
that they would like for us to address or look over like we did the Career Center property, we'll be happy to
do
put that in the hands of those engineers and let them look, dig a little deeper.
Go back to the career center, you said it was 1.5, what we talked about, that 18 acres or whatever, I mean,
It's 32 acres there.
was the consideration given with potential acquiring
Anything else for the good of the group tonight? We got a long meeting tomorrow night, or not a long meeting, a 6 o'clock meeting tomorrow night, and,
So do I have some direction? Does anybody have any property you would like for us to research into?
I think we can
Start
go,
on that tomorrow. if
we'll
we-
look at
We
some.
wouldn't say it out loud, didn't y'all say that before I started?
Yeah, we don't want to tell you, look,
Can
give you
one of
some
you
options.
just write it down and pass it pass it around the table to us?
We'll do that.
Quiet.
Okay, we can do that.
Anything else? Stand adjourned for the workshop. Thank you, thank you.